Hey everybody, it's Lon Seidman. I thought I would do an update today on my amateur radio adventure. This is my base station now, which I'll take you on a tour of in a few minutes. And this all began about a year ago when I picked up one of these really low-cost software-defined radio devices. This one's called the RTL SDR. And when you plug a wire into it, you can start picking up signals from all over the world, data and voice and all sorts of cool stuff. And it really got me interested in what else I could do with radio. So I went out and got my technician license around May of last year, and I've been messing around with a little handheld radio for a while. But in my last video, I did what I called a ham haul, where I unboxed this great Yaesu radio that you'll see in a minute, along with some other equipment. And I finally got everything set up in a way that I can use it in a more permanent fashion. So what I thought I would do in this video is show you all the things that I'm doing as an entry-level licensed technician on the airwaves here in the United States. I'm working on getting my next level license, and you can see some of the things that you might be able to do if you get a license yourself. And of course, the other videos in this series will be helpful in the progression leading up to where we are today. I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for most of the stuff in the video with my own funds. I'll point out the areas in which I may have gotten something in from a manufacturer. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. Now, before we jump into things, I thought it might be helpful to talk about the radio frequencies that I'll be referring to in this video. As a technician, I'm largely limited to the 10-meter band that runs at 28 megahertz. This band for a technician is largely the farthest you can transmit with voice or data. You do have access to some of the lower bands, but only with Morse code, which I am not proficient at yet. But if I do get proficient with it, there are a few lower bands I can operate on, but only with Morse code at a certain power level. But as a technician, you can speak to people on the 10-meter band and transmit data back and forth, provided you stay within the limits of where you can go. So you can go from 28 megahertz up to 28.5 megahertz, but not higher. And then as your license level increases, you have access to a greater portion of the band. Right now, the 10-meter band is really an exciting place for new operators because you can transmit quite far, and I'll show you how far in a second. And that's due to the sunspot activity and atmospheric conditions. So even the more experienced hams are having a great time on this band that is largely limited to the newbies out there because the conditions are so good right now. You'll also hear me talk about the 2-meter band. And this is more of a localized band where you'll pick up your local repeater stations from amateur radio clubs and also do all of your local data transmissions. But we'll be spending most of our time today on 10-meter activities. Let's take a look now at the station and my antenna setup, and then we'll come back and send some stuff out over the air. So here is KC1 RGS station as it exists at the moment. And what we've got here is the Yaesu FT991A radio that I unboxed in my ham haul a few months ago. This has proven to be an excellent radio covering all of the bands that I'm authorized to use at the moment. And of course, it'll work on bands that I will be able to use when I upgrade my license, hopefully in a few weeks. I'm still studying up for that test. What we added to the mix since that last video is this box here. This is an antenna tuner that I need for using the antenna that you'll see in a minute outside. The reason is the antenna that I have is a multi-band antenna, and one of the big challenges in amateur radio is preventing energy from coming back down the antenna into the radio. It's called SWR, and you're constantly battling it. So this device here helps with that by making my transmissions more efficient, which of course reduces wear and tear on the radio's electronics. The power supply here is what I had before. It's adequate to power the radio. This radio will transmit a maximum of 100 watts on the high frequency bands and 50 watts on the VHF and UHF bands. And I'll show you how I'm using some of those bands here in a minute when we go into some of the details here. Now over here is a little mini PC that, in full disclosure, came in from B-Link a little while back. And you'll notice there's a USB cable plugged into it because this radio can output its audio over USB, and the computer can also control the radio over USB, which is really helpful for digital modes that I will be showing you. And right now what I have it doing is listening to some Morse code from a beacon that is located in Texas. And you can hear that tone. In a second, that tone is going to start doing Morse code. This was actually coming in a little clearer a little bit earlier, and this is one of the issues you deal with related to atmospheric conditions when using ham radio here. But what the software here is attempting to do is translate that Morse code into text here. And it looks like we got the end of the word beacon there. Earlier when the signal was clearer, it was coming in super clear. But here is the call sign of the beacon as it's getting decoded by the computer, which is just listening to the audio. And you'll see there's a couple of other modes that we'll be playing with that also do that. It's really, really cool. And that's pretty much it for the setup right now. I'm using 2 different antennas, which we'll take a look at outside in a second. But the radio here does it all. I may get another radio to do some of the more localized digital modes like packet BBSs and stuff that I want to do. But for now, I'm really happy with this setup, and it will take me into the next class of license that I hope to get to very soon. So this is my high frequency antenna. This is an MCOM3 from a company called Chameleon. I bought this a little while ago. These are portable antennas, but they work really well permanently to some degree too. I have it configured right now in its inverted L format, where this wire goes up here. There's my dog saying hello. And then it goes all the way over to my kid's playscape here. Now this is not an ideal antenna location. It needs to be higher than this. But to get started, it's been great to play around with. Now, in addition to the wire going to the playscape, there's another wire here called the counterpoise that runs along the ground. It's about 25 feet long, and this goes a little past my walkway here to complete the antenna. Now, way up on the top of the roof is my UHF and VHF antenna, and this has been working great. I'm reaching stations about 30 to 40 miles, sometimes 50 miles away, which is great, especially because I'm only transmitting at 50 watts out of that antenna, but I can reach all of the repeaters in my general area, but also beyond that, in another state even, and you'll see some of the digital modes I'm doing off of that antenna in a second. Now, over here is where the antennas come in. So I installed this little box here, and this is a weatherproof box, and if I open it up, what you'll see is how the antennas go in. So pretty cheap little box I bought on Amazon, but it's working great. And these are the 2 feed lines. One is coming down from the antenna on the roof. This one is for the HF antenna. I'm going to eventually put in a lightning system here, but for now I just unplug stuff when I'm not using it, just for the sake of expediency here. And then you'll see I have a copper wire coming out. This is for my RF grounding. And one of the good practices is to ground your station. So the radio and the tuner are grounded to this metal rod here, so I don't get zapped or burned by any RF energy that's going in the wrong direction. And inside I have this grounding bar that I had the guys put in. So as you can see, those 2 green wires are coming down from the radio and the tuner, and then get grounded out to that rod that's in the ground. And you can see those green wires there leading to that ground plate. So that's the current setup, and I'm sure a lot of you may have some suggestions for me down below in the comment section. One of the things that I love about amateur radio is that there is no one right way to do something. There's a lot of different right ways to do something, and that's part of the fun of the hobby, is just tweaking things and getting a little better each time and learning as you go. And some of the most experienced ham operators I have met are still learning something new every day, and I think that's what attracts people to this hobby. Now, how far am I getting out on this radio? Well, once I put that new antenna up, my very first contact was with somebody in Russia. And as you can see here, I've talked to people in Chile, throughout different parts of the United States, and a lot of communication with Central America and South America. It seems like that's where I am reaching the best. And just about every person that I talked to on this list here said I came in 5.9, which means very, very clear. And again, different times of day make a difference. Different atmospheric conditions make a difference. So no 2 days are the same on amateur radio insofar as how far you can reach, especially with a wire antenna like I have out there. You're kind of at the whim of the atmosphere and what it's doing to have your signals bounce around the globe. Now, I do have a recording of a voice contact I made with a radio club in Texas. Every year they celebrate the birthday of the USS Texas, which is currently in dry dock getting restored. And they were operating from the deck of this ship in Texas. Have a listen to what that conversation sounded like.
Hello, CQ10, CQ10, CQ10 from W5 Tango, W5 Texas.
Kilo Charlie 1, Romeo Golf Sierra.
Kilo Charlie 1, Romeo Golf the error there. Good morning. Kind of running a little slow there. Been up most of the night there. So anyway, how you doing this morning? Did I get the call correct? Kilowatt Charlie #1, Radio Golf Sierra.
You got it right. This is Lon in Connecticut. I've been hearing about you guys, so I'm glad I caught you on the air.
Yeah, John. Well, good to hear you there. Yeah, we were operating different modes a while ago there, so we've been operating the last 2 days there quite a bit. There's several of us on the air there, so anyway, good to hear you. Glad you got the log there, and guess you've already checked this out there.
So it's always fun to pick up the mic and just talk to people. You can find people on the air just by tuning through the frequency and seeing who you pick up. If there's an area of the band that is not in use, you could go on and just call CQ, calling all stations, and eventually somebody will hear you and respond. And again, generally, my communications over this 10-meter band have been far beyond my home state here of Connecticut. Another way you can find people are through spotting sites like this one called dxwatch.com. And this is real time here. And as people find other people that they're talking to on the air, they log it on this website, and you can tune to that frequency and make contact with somebody as well. So for example, if I wanted to talk to somebody in Belgium right now, I could tune to that frequency and see if I pick them up. Generally, I have found if you hear somebody, they will likely be able to hear you. And I'm going clear across continents here just with 100 watts of power and a wire on my kid's playscape in the backyard. So it doesn't take much to get started here. And a lot of the people you might talk to may very well be in a park with a battery and an antenna up in a tree. It's really amazing how far these signals can go. Let's move on now to digital modes. And one of the most popular digital modes out there right now is something called FT8. And you see it running here on my little ham shack computer with a piece of software called WSJTX, which is what most people use to communicate via this mode. And what FT8 is are very small data packets. Let me zoom in on one of them here. So what you can see here is somebody from Puerto Rico calling CQ. So they're sending a message that says CQ, their call sign, and this number and letter combination, which is their location on a map grid. Here's another one that just came in from South Africa. And what's interesting about this mode is that it can hear, the software, can hear signals that you as a human likely could not. So it can almost pull signals out of the staticky noise that you often hear on one of these radios. And that's what's so remarkable about this and why it's so popular is that you can have a pretty lousy antenna set up, yet you can send a packet out and have that packet heard from quite a large distance. There is some debate as to how much power you should use for FT8. I generally start around 25 watts or so and then boost it if I feel like I need to get a little more power to communicate with somebody further away. But what I'm going to do here real quick is just send out a CQ packet. And what will happen here is once it cycles through its 15-second listening mode here, it's going to move into transmission mode. So what you're going to see here is that green bar going to the end. And when it reaches the end there and after it's heard a bunch of packets, it's going to start transmitting. So you can see my radio right now is transmitting. You can see my SWR is about 1.5. I probably should have hit the tune button there before I did it here, but that's the transmission going out. And you will see that light go out, and now we go and listen. Now the way this works is that it will listen every 15 seconds. That's the transmission window. And then everyone who transmitted during that 15 seconds listens for the subsequent 15 seconds. So it's really important for your computer's clock to be in sync with everyone else's clock. So what a lot of people do is use a network time utility like this one called NetTime on Windows. And this will synchronize your clock up with an atomic clock so that you can all be on the same 15-second cycle here. Otherwise, you're not going to get many contacts. Now, what's funny is that in the course of me talking to you here, somebody responded to my CQ. So you can see here, KY0R responded. So what that person did is they saw my CQ, they clicked on me, and they transmitted their call sign along with their map grid location. And then I responded back with my signal strength. And this all happens largely in an automated fashion. So when the software picks up a response like this, it will generate the signal report from the person that just contacted us. You can see they came in -5 dB, and I responded with that. They came back and said, I read you minus 15 on my end, and then the client says, Roger, Roger, 73, and 73 in ham radio parlance means thanks, goodbye. And they then responded with that, and you can log the contact on there. Now, that person we just communicated with was located in Colorado. I'm in Connecticut, so with just 30 watts of power and no internet, you can transmit messages pretty far with a minimal setup, and that's what makes this FT8 mode so popular. You can get out a lot farther than you could with just your voice alone. And what's also nice about it is that there's no language barrier. So everyone using the FT8 software knows what the conventions are. They know how to use it no matter what language they're speaking. So you can rapidly build up the number of contacts you've made as an amateur radio operator. And that speaks to kind of the core foundation of amateur radio, which is making contacts with others and logging those contacts to see how far you can get and how many people you can talk to. Now, there's a great website called pskreporter.info. And what this is really useful for is troubleshooting how things are working out. So even if nobody responds to your CQ request, PSK Reporter will tell you how far your signal got out, because everyone running the software, even if they're not in front of it, can click a button and have the software report what it's hearing back to this website. And a lot of people participate in this. In fact, they get probably millions of signal reports a day on here. It's just constant. And as you can see here, in the last hour, I've been able to reach at 30 watts people up here in Canada, a good chunk of the central United States here, and then all the way through South America, Central America. Here we're in Brazil with a minus 18 dB signal. We got out to South Africa, and it looks like to Belgium here as well. And what's so fun about this is that, again, even if nobody's talking to you, you can troubleshoot your radio rig and figure out what tweaks you can make to the antenna or to the power level to get yourself further out. One other neat thing this demonstrates is what's called the skip zone in radio. So as I'm transmitting, all of these stations here between these folks and me didn't hear me at all, and that's how radio waves work. They basically skip off the atmosphere and come back down. So this is where I'm coming down today based on my antenna design and atmospheric conditions, and this will shift. There are days when I can get into Florida quite easily and not further out. And again, it's all kind of subject to what the conditions are in the atmosphere on that particular day. But what I really enjoyed about this website is understanding some of the concepts that you learn about as you're studying for your exams. You can actually see those concepts visually here with signals that you generate on your own, and how changing things might impact how those signals reach different places. Now, there's another piece of software that I run as a companion to the FT8 software called Grid Tracker. And this provides a way of visualizing who's talking to who and where people are located. And this is all based off of what I am receiving here. So you can see there's somebody attempting to make a contact with somebody else in France from the Midwest. And all of these blue squares on the map are squares that I have not yet communicated with. And so if I go over to my data button here and look at my logbook, these yellow squares are people that I've made successful contacts with. And part of the game here is trying to fill up as many of these map squares across the world as you can. And that's what kind of makes this addictive for me. It's always like one more contact to pick up, one more yellow square that I can add to my map. And that's what's kind of driving me here. And the FT8 software also keeps track of this. So all of these orange lines here indicate a new map grid location that I haven't yet communicated with. So I may want to reach out to this person here and have a successful contact, log that QSO, which is a successful exchange of information, and turn one of those blue grids to yellow and continue onward with my quest. At this moment, I've communicated now with people in most of the US states. I just have a few left to go. So I am making some progress here. Eventually this may not be as fun, but right now, because I have so many more map grids to fill up, I am really having a blast every once in a while just playing around with FT8. And the way I have things set up here in the house is that I put a little VNC server on that mini PC, so I can log in from my laptop anywhere in the house and conduct these FT8 communications, so I'm not just stuck down here in the basement. So it's a nice, fun kind of passive activity when I'm trying to get the kids to bed or doing something else around the house. Now, as I mentioned, FT8 works on a 15-second cycle. So you have to listen for 15 seconds and then transmit for 15 seconds. And it can take a while to get through a full communication here. But they have another mode called FT4 that operates at double the speed, 7.5 seconds versus 15. And so as you can see here, the green bar down there is moving a lot quicker. And so you can much more quickly make contacts with the FT4 mode. However, because you're not transmitting or listening for as long, some of the weaker signals will not get picked up. So you can't go as far with FT4 as you can with FT8, but the communications go a lot quicker. So right now I just communicated with somebody in Brazil. They responded back to me, and we'll have this entire cycle of communication done here in half the time as we would in the other mode. Now FT8 and FT4 basically just send signal reports back and forth between the participants. There's another mode called VARAC that is gaining popularity that allows for much more robust communications to take place. So right now I've got it tuned on the 10 meter band. Unfortunately, 10 meter is not as popular with VARAC as FT8 is. I think the 20 meter band is pretty much where the bulk of the activity on VARAC is taking place right now. But what I do during the day, if I'm just working on other stuff, is I leave it on and have it send a beacon here every 15 minutes or so. And when a beacon goes out, what'll happen here is you'll see in this little section of the screen who else is sending beacons. And what you can do is right click on them. You can go to qrz.com to look up who they are. You can send a request to get a signal report very similar to FT8, but you can also do things like send mail or even have a chat with them, a keyboard-to-keyboard chat, kind of like Discord here, but for ham operators. And although today is not so active, if we go over to a prior conversation that I had when 10 meter was very active with VARAC one day, you can see what happens here. So this is where all the beacons were coming in. Over here are people that were looking to have a conversation. They would call CQ, and you click on their name and have a chat with them. And this was a chat that I had with somebody, I think also located in the Colorado area. His name was Bill. And as you can see, we could have a much more robust communication typing back and forth to each other. And if you want, you can even send files to people. It takes a really long time to send the file given the speed of the connection here. But this mode, I think, is gaining a lot of popularity because it allows people to communicate like this over long distances with a nice interface without a lot of complexity in between. So I wanted to make this video so you could see all the different things you can do as a technician on the HF bands. You can certainly do more as you upgrade your license, but given how active the 10 meter band is right now, I think it's a great time to get started. And if you are a tech and you don't yet have an HF radio, you could probably find one used for not that much money, get a wire and a tuner, and you're off and running, and I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Now what you see here is something else I've been playing around with now that I have a better antenna on my roof for VHF communication, and that is using packet radio bulletin board systems. And I haven't done much with these yet, but I'm noticing that there's quite a bit of activity in my region of Connecticut. There's a bunch of nodes set up. So right now I am connecting to a packet node located about 25 miles or so away from me. And as you can see here, we just connected to it. And what I can do is actually connect to another packet radio station that is not within range of me, but is within range of the system that I'm connected to here. So I just issued a command to connect to KA1VSC4. And as you can see, I've made the link here, and we are essentially connecting here to a bulletin board system, kind of an old school bulletin board system. So just like an old school 80s BBS that you might log into with a telephone modem, here I can leave messages for other ham operators. These are, of course, now linked over the internet, so messages can get transited between bulletin board systems, but only picked up when you're logged in over radio frequencies here. I'm still kind of learning the ropes as to how to make all this stuff work. It is rather slow, as you can see, but I think there's a lot of interest in reviving this part of the hobby, especially in my area of Connecticut here. And it kind of works just like those old school modem-based BBS systems did. All text, but still a great way to communicate, and I think keep something alive that might be necessary should we ever have a big storm that takes out a lot of infrastructure. There's really nothing needed beyond a power source, a cheap computer like a Raspberry Pi, and a radio, and you can basically communicate digitally and leave messages for people in a way that doesn't require a phone network or an internet or anything else to get those messages brought across there. So one of the things that I want to do next is set up my own packet radio BBS. there hasn't been a lot of software development in this area, so I'd like to maybe explore coding something simple that might work in that way. So that's kind of a future thing, I think, but still I wanted to show it to you just because it's kind of cool that this is becoming a thing again, and you can communicate over the radio with text and a keyboard. So that is going to do it for what I am doing on amateur radio. Not bad, I think, for my first year here. My next step is to get my general license so I can expand beyond the 10-meter band. That test is a little harder than the one I took for the technician exam, especially because I don't have a lot of aptitude or knowledge in this area. So I've been studying quite a bit, learning quite a bit, and very eager to keep diving into this hobby. I'd love to hear from you about what you think about amateur radio. I know a lot of you watching are amateur radio operators yourself, so look for me on the air. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Brian Parker, Chris Allegretta, Hot Sauce and Video Games, Logic KGR, Tom Albrecht, and Amda Brown. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.